Nay, you don't just look different, but pregnant as well. Nonsense, I exclaimed. I'm just 15. What do you mean that I am just 15? My sister asked, her voice laced with concern. For crying out loud, any girl seeing her period is capable of getting pregnant. Nne, tell me, who did you sleep with that got you pregnant? My sister asked, her eyes scanning mine for any sign of truth. You know you can trust me, and your secret is safe with me. She reassured me, her voice soft and gentle. I stood, speechless, staring at my sister as she walked past me. Nne, she called, jerking me out of my reverie. We will get through this together. I'll be listening whenever you are ready to speak. I stood frozen, my mind reeling with thought. Me, Nne, the last surviving virgin, since all the girls went rogue, pregnant, Tufiakwa, I exclaimed. In the weeks that followed, I developed symptoms with pregnancy, from mood swing to loss of appetite and craving for things out of reach. The symptoms kept surfacing, but I wasn't bothered because I knew I was still a virgin and no man had come between my legs. As time progressed, I grew concerned as my feet started swelling and the looks from people felt different. They looked at me with concern and whispered to one another whenever I passed on the street. I remained adamant because my virginity was still intact and no one had come between my thighs. I kept going strong until I came face to face with Iyatope, my mother's adversary and sworn enemy. Iya had her eyes on me for a moment before bursting into a song. The song was provocative, and I felt the sting of a bad energy darting towards me. Grateful for all times, all the people wey dey look me with one eye. Iya stand like tall giant. Wise up, you no carry belle, still carry mumu face join. Iya passionately sang, stamping her foot. She kept the momentum going, singing and trailing behind me before my mother came to my rescue. Iya, it's been long you learned your last lesson. Don't push my button, my mother warned. Iyabo, I repeat, don't push my button, my mother thundered. Which stupid button? Tell me which button, Iya retorted. Can't you see your useless daughter pushing it herself, Iya spat. Iyabo, it is you and that foolish prostitute you call a daughter that is useless, my mother shot back. Did you just call my daughter a prostitute? Iyabo asked, her voice trembling with rage. Isn't that her profession? Sleeping with men, so her lazy mother and handicapped father can feed. My mother replied. Iyabo was almost in tears, and seeing the enemy cry gave me butterflies in my stomach. But my joy was short-lived when Iyabo dropped the bombshell. No one is guilty of prostitution except caught in the act, and currently there is no evidence of my daughter being a prostitute. But the baby growing inside your daughter is more than enough evidence of your daughter being a prostitute but living in pretense, Iyabo said, storming out of my mother. My mother seemed astonished by Iyabo's word. She turned to me, her gaze scanning my body to see if Iyabo's word had substance. Nne, my mother called, get inside, we need to talk. Few moments later, I was on my knees, crying and pleading to be heard, but it all fell on deaf ears. In the long run, as my mother kept drilling and trying to cover truth from ignorance, my dad returned from work and swiftly joined the party. Nne, how could you do this to me? How could you? My dad screamed, tears streaming down his face. So tell me, who is responsible for this bastard child you are carrying? He asked. Dad, I don't know. I cried, my voice breaking into sob. If I'm pregnant, I don't know how. I cried. My dad, provoked by my words, picked up from the floor by the neck, throwing me against the concrete wall. At this moment, my mom felt pity for me as my dad's temper boiled beyond control. She knew the drill could turn fatal, so she stepped in to cool my dad. Hey, I thought you were different. I'm highly disappointed in you, said my father nonchalantly, walking out of the room. My mom kept pressuring on the matter, but also comforted me in the process. My answer didn't change as she decided to conduct a virginity test using an egg. Mom was torn discovering on that my virginity was intact. Confused, she proposed we visited the hospital for a test which we did, and the result did not change. I was still a virgin. So, if I did not get pregnant through intercourse, how did it happen? Everyone wondered. So, if you did not get pregnant through sexual intercourse, how then are you pregnant? My dad asked, his voice laced with frustration. Tell me, are you the reincarnation of the Virgin Mary? He continued, his tone sarcastic. You better start speaking, cause you are driving me crazy, he exclaimed, pacing restlessly in the sitting room. Honey, calm down. You really need to calm down, my mother intervened, trying to lighten the mood. I'm sure there is an explanation for it. I refused to calm down, my dad retorted. Don't ever ask me to calm down. So, tell me, how do I explain to these people when asked? Will I go about claiming it happened through natural causes? Oh God, this is madness, pure madness, he exclaimed. My mother knew it was in everyone's interest to take a redress, as every attempt to calm my dad got him erupting like a volcano. Dad kept his face straight for days, refusing to look me in the eyes or even answer my greeting. I knew I had let him down by stripping him of his bragging rights, as he often boasted to his friends and neighbors about my mental prowess and unquestionable character. Since carnal knowledge and medics failed to find the root cause of the pregnancy, Mom took a different route, engaging in midnight prayers. My dad, on the other hand, prayed to an error, their family deity, passed down through the ages. The outsiders wondered how a traditionalist and a strong contender of the faith got entangled and moving along so well, since oil and water don't mix. I, the carrier of the pregnancy, was scared to death as numerous tales of women who birthed bush babies crossed my heart, and I feared I might birth a demon. I suggested an abortion, but my parents rejected the idea, telling me abortion was evil and highlighting the risks it posed to health, life, and well-being. Since my preposition didn't go through, I vowed to take my life if it ended. I bet a demon or a bush baby. My dad's mouth leaked, and the news of me getting pregnant without having sexual intercourse with a man spread uncontrollable like wildfire. The phenomenon earned me a nickname, Mary of the 21st century, which I fondly called by my enemies. Often, I wished the ground would open to swallow my haters and me altogether, erasing my name and discomfort record, but all I could do was wish. Whenever I felt the baby kicking, depression kicked in, and not only did I pray, but I did odd jobs as well to foster a miscarriage, but the baby was here to stay. The pills I took, the jobs I did, seemed to help the baby get healthier by the day. As the kick became frequent, isn't there more to life than this? I thought, will I birth a child not knowing what the father looks like? As the days went on, with questions flooding my mind, I stumbled upon a revelation. What revelation did Nne have? The mystery surrounding my pregnancy began to unravel as I sank deep in thought. It happened a few weeks ago. A close friend of mine had a party, and I was invited, but I declined. Since I was an introvert, I felt gravely uneasy amongst crowd. Mom caught wind of the invitation and scolded me for declining, urging me to go and cheer Amanda the celebrant on her birthday, since she was my best friend. On the day of the party, the sun beat down on the luxurious mansion, casting a warm glow over the vibrant party scene. The sound of laughter and music filled the air as guests mingled and danced by the crystal clear swimming pool. It was a pool party. The girls wore bikinis and the boys had their shirts on, cruising inside the swimming pool as the music blasted the speakers. Amanda was one of the elite class, and her flamboyant father spared no expense in spoiling his only daughter. "Come on, girl, loosen up. This isn't a church service," said Amanda, patting me on the shoulder as I stood to watch the girls and guys compete in a swimming contest. Under immense pressure, I changed into a bikini. I was beyond uncomfortable as I hated showcasing my body, but I was encouraged to behave like a Roman since I was in Rome. Everyone seems to pause momentarily as soon as I surfaced from the surface and shadows. I knew they were mesmerized by my enthralling beauty, as the guys couldn't get their eyes off me. "Man, so this is what you have been hiding. She's such one true desire," said one of the guys. The Manchester is standing and Baka is giving. I wish I could place my hands on those," affirmed another. "To chop slap just a hungry owner," said Toby, one class comedian, in Nigerian pidgin English. Everyone burst out laughing. Their laughter was contagious, and I joined them as a couple of guys popped the champagne and sang the birthday jingle to the celebrant. Fresh as new wine, yellow as the glowing sun, endowed with the naked black women. Those were the words of a male suitor used to describe me while we conversed. The onlooking crowd knew I was shy and motivated me to get into the pool by chanting my name. Although fear clouded my judgment, I got into the pool just to feel among. While in the pool, the guys watched me from a distance since I was notorious for slapping the black out of boys when they proved too persuasive. After hours of partying, the event was over and everyone, after giving gifts or goodwill messages, returned to their different destinations. I tried to get my mind off the pool party because nothing seemed strange and no man came in between my thighs. But the more I tried suppressing the thought, the more it reoccurred in my mind. After a while of fighting to connect the dots, something strange happened from the blue. My heart sank as I realized that I carried in my womb wasn't just a human, but a baboon. My world darkened as I settled on the thought of giving birth to a plump, round body covered in soft thick fur, a pinkish face, button nose, and large around eyes, rounded ears, and a long tail. But wait, how did Nne go from getting pregnant from a swimming pool to having a baby baboon in her womb? Was it a curse or a supernatural phenomenon? Nne was figuratively pregnant with a baboon and wasn't carrying the baboon in her womb. She was pregnant with Aziz's child. Aziz was Nne's classmate. He was tall, with flaming red eyes and gigantic dark skin. Aziz was regarded as not just the most ugly guy in school, but in the community. His face, steps and movements were similar to those of a baboon, so his classmates named him King Kong. Nne's story seemed to have a funny plot, as no man had come between her thighs, and if anyone would, it would be a Prince Charming, not a baboon-like human. But how did Aziz impregnate Nne by sitting and watching from the poolside? Was there a magical way of having intercourse and planting his seed? Everyone knew Aziz had a crush on Nne, and her friends often teased her. They would give her a side eye or rub their palms against their chests whenever Aziz was in sight. Nne was exasperated beyond measures, but soon grew accustomed to their teasing. Aziz once approached Nne for a date, which she smiled and kindly turned him down. Aziz proved persuasive, so Nne slapped him to reset his brain. Henceforth, Aziz watched Nne from a distance. But today, the baboon seems to have the spotlight, as he had impregnated the most beautiful girl in school. Nne was tall and a round face, piercing blue eyes, and was endowed. But how did she get pregnant by a baboon? It happened that after swimming in the pool, her friend who held her close were out of sight and Nne needed something to keep warm. Upon exiting the pool, Aziz, who sat at the edge of the pool, watched silently. noticing Nne shivering, and approached to help. He gave her his shorts to wear and a jacket to keep warm. But could one get pregnant by merely wearing a guy's clothes? The answer is obviously no. If not, then how? As his mind was busy fantasizing about having a moment in bed with Nne, his emotions grew so loud that he ejaculated in his pants. In that moment of ejaculation, he noticed Nne shivering by the poolside, so he offered her his jacket and the shorts he has ejaculated in. Nne confided in her mother, and they both went to Aziz's house to tell him what had happened. On reaching there, they received the shock of their lives. Aziz is dead. Those three words sent chills down my spine as I sat incapacitated like one struck by lightning. My mother accompanied me to Aziz's house, the boy whose child I was carrying. The house was an ancient brown clay hut adorned with flowers. The surrounding area was natural, like the scenes I see in Nollywood movies. I later learned that Aziz came to our school on a scholarship, as there was no way his parents, living under harsh conditions, could afford the fees. Mom suggested we keep the discovery of my child's father away from my dad because he had a tendency of visiting the family and serving them fresh violence. My mother loved orderliness and wanted everything to progress smoothly without causing harm, so involving my father was unnecessary, as his family was in distress because they had just lost a son. I, on the other hand, was distressed because of the unwanted pregnancy and the passing of my child's father. This is unbelievable. I saw Aziz yesterday morning, I said. Yes, he was knocked down by a drunk driver speeding in the wrong lane. His mother replied, her voice breaking into sobs, before letting out a loud cry. Oh, Aziz, my boy, she wept bitterly. Everything was going on fine, as Aziz's parents taught us to be well-wishers who came to console the family. The table swiftly turned and the rage was bettered as soon as my mother stated the reason for our coming. The family was not in for an explanation and asked us to leave immediately. I know my boy Aziz. He will not do such a thing. He was school-oriented and not girls-oriented, screamed Aziz's father, who had been sitting quietly in the corner. We left the family compound with a heavy heart, and I prayed not to see the sunrise, but God seems to fill me with strength for another day. Mother's blood pressure rose due to overthinking. I begged and prayed she stay strong, but it all availed to nothing, as my mother, who had been battling cancer, silently lost her battle and bowed out of the earth. I cried my eyes out, but no amount of tears could bring her back. Dad blamed me for the death of his wife and metamorphosed into a weapon of cruelty overnight. Hitting me over the slightest mistake, he asked after the father of my child, and when I had no answer, he dealt with me like a criminal, not caring if I was pregnant. One evening, shortly after my mother's burial, I was in the bathtub taking a shower when I slipped and fell. The fall was fatal and I began bleeding seriously from my vagina. I screamed and my dad rushed in. I was hoping for a lift or some sort of assistance from him, but he turned his back and left me to bleed out. I cursed the day, I bet you, I heard him say as he turned away from me. My vision blurred as I lay bleeding to death. The uncertainty of what awaited me on the other side of consciousness filled me with immense fear. I knew my work on earth was not yet done, and there was a purpose for my coming. So I gathered all my strength and screamed for help. Just then, I heard footsteps approaching before I blacked out. When I came to my senses, I was lying on a bed in a hospital ward, surrounded by patients and doctors. While my eyes scanned the room, a young handsome doctor walked up to me. Introducing himself as Dr. Essien, I inquired about my rescuer, the one who rushed me to the hospital and saved my life. Upon hearing the description, hot tears poured down my cheeks, as my rescuer was my neighbor, Dave, who I have looked down on and treated like garbage, but he looked beyond my cruelty and came to the rescue when my own dad abandoned me. Dr. Essien was nice, and the aura emanating from him preached grace. He asked me how I got there and what happened to me. I narrated my ordeal, and the doctor seemed to possess deep understanding, urging me to forgive my dad to quicken my recovery. I initially vowed to hate my father, but Dave's action gave me a rethink, as he taught me forgiveness and love. Although I suffered a miscarriage, I was grateful for life. While in the hospital, Dave, my neighbor, kept visiting and helping out in various ways. The bills were heavy, and having no one to vouch for me, I was hopeless, but hopelessness quickly faded away and returned as Dave's family cleared my hospital bill. Not just clearing my bills, but they helped me further till my higher institution and masters. Upon graduating from the university, I was lucky to get a job with good pay. Dave, who studied petroleum engineering, graduated with a first-class honors and offered automatic employment. In the long run, we fell in love, got married, and our union was blessed with 3 children. Looking back, I am grateful for what I went through. They prepared me for the present moment. The end.